For more reaction, I'm joined by the ANC veteran, Pallo Jordan, who joins me on the line. And Mr. Jordan, thank you for your time. Just your reflections at this moment at hearing the news of the passing on of FW de Klerk.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's been my view that amongst 20th century Afrikaner politicians, FW de Klerk would be counted amongst the four most prominent. The first amongst them being Jan Smuts, who started out as a Boer War hero, but ended as an imperial statesman. The second one would be D.F. Malan, who inaugurated the Apartheid regime. The third would be Verwoerd, the architect of the system. And then FW, the man who was persuaded to phase out apartheid. In that respect, I suppose one would have to give him credit for a degree of moral courage and political hard-headedness, if you like, that he was willing to face up to the brutal reality that the apartheid regime was politically defeated inside South Africa, was internationally isolated, and the prospect was that it would be overthrown by violent means. In that respect, I suppose, he will be noted as one of the important figures of 20th century South African history.
How difficult was this task of navigating the conclusion and wrapping up and folding of apartheid, given the realities of growing international pressure as well as the struggles of South African people at the time, but also at the same time being sensitive to the political realities within which he was operating, right? Because at some point he was the leader of the National Party, but at the beginning of 1989, he is ousted as, he steps down as the leader of the National Party, giving in fact, he comes in, I'm getting the facts incorrect there. In fact, he comes in at the beginning of 89 when P.W. Botha steps down as the leader of the NP. So it wasn't always guaranteed that he was going to carry his political base along with him on this path of engagement with the ANC. But in the end, he pulls it off.
Yes, I'm sure it was very difficult for him to manage that. But at the same time, too, one has to recognize that the National Party politicians themselves were faced with exactly the same realities that FW was wrestling with. His big problem, I think, was his constituency outside Parliament. That is the majority of the Afrikaner population who had supported the NP consistency since 1948. Because that's another thing that we have to remember, that the Afrikaner community was never united behind the NP, even after 1948. It was always divided. It was only, I think, around 1961 that you could say the NP actually commanded a majority of the white electorate in South Africa. Before that, they didn't have the majority of the white electorate behind them. So those are some of the realities we have to remember. FW then had to reckon with that constituency outside Parliament. And he had also to reckon with the constituency which he represented, which was the Afrikaner elite, the business establishment, and what they were saying to him. So, balancing all those, the only way out for him was, in fact, the route he took. Because the alternative was to try to do the P.W. Botha thing of saying, I'm not changing, and then being overthrown by force and violence, and perhaps in that process, losing everything.
So lastly, let me ask you, Mr. Jordan, around his role in the government of national unity. We know that in 1996, actually, the National Party left the government of national unity. I'm going to pause for a moment, Mr. Jordan, as we take the visuals that are coming through outside FW de Klerk's home as we see a vehicle there. But I will give you an opportunity to respond to the question I was about to ask. Monique Motlock, if you can hear me, tell us what we are seeing on screen at the moment.
What you're seeing right now is what looks to be the hearse leaving the home of former President FW de Klerk. And we have VIP protection services vehicles following the hearse. My colleague Balungile Tlamini just showing you what's happening right now. The gates of the house is closing. And we see here's obviously a group of my media colleagues also here. This road it was closed earlier, but we see traffic officials, as you can see, moving down the road now, driving off.
Yeah.
So they've reopened the road now. So I think it's safe to presume that that was the hearse leaving the home in light of the VIP protection services following that vehicle.
All right, Monique, we'll touch base with you a bit later on. Let me go back to Mr. Pallo Jordan. Lastly, I had asked you, Mr. Jordan, to reflect on FW de Klerk in the government of national unity. Second deputy president, what was your sense of his role and interactions, particularly the relationship, the working relationship with the president at the time, Nelson Mandela?
No, I think he played a positive role in the government of national unity. There were, of course, moments when there were, very sharp differences, and there were moments in which there were tensions. There was one particular cabinet meeting when I thought that de Klerk would walk out because of a clash he'd had with Mandela in the course of the meeting, but he didn't. The contribution that the NP made to the government of national unity, I think, was more one of producing a situation of stability in which the worst fears of the white population, I think, were, in a sense, mollified. And in that respect, I suppose it was a very positive role. I never understood myself why they walked out of the government of national unity in 1996, but that was their choice.
All right, Pallo Jordan, thank you. I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. A man who knows, who actually lived that reality of our transition, was really at the forefront of it all. And if you're going to get any quality reflections, you will be getting it from people such as Pallo Jordan.